And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is the Tech for Good live show. My name is Tom Raftery with SAP, and with me I have my lovely assistant, my co-host, Chris. Chris,
yes.
I'll ask you to introduce yourself in a second. I just want to point out to people, because there can be a bit of confusion with LinkedIn on the way it does this. If you're watching this, and it's Tuesday, and it's 5 p.m. CET, 12 p.m. East Coast US, because the time has changed in America and not here in Europe yet, 9 a.m. Pacific. If that's the time where you are, then you're watching this live. If you're watching it at any other time, it's more likely you're watching the recorded version of this. Because I keep getting comments from people going, "Hi, Tom," 2 days later, and I'm going, it was 2 days ago, so sorry about that.
Yes, exactly.
People get notifications. Someone told me last week they got a notification the following day that it was starting, and they were jumped in and they got all excited and they were convinced they were watching it live. So sorry about that. It's a LinkedIn thing. There's Kai Van has just said hi in the comments as well.
Yep.
So we've got no, wrong one.
You've done it again.
I went to the wrong screen again, haven't I? There's Kai Van saying hi. So sorry, I interrupted you, Chris. I was saying I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Chris Kernaghan. I'm an SAP mentor. I am a global technical practice lead at a large global SI, and I have a great love of technology and what it does for society, and trying to make the world a better place. So thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for joining me again. Chris and I have been doing this kind of thing going back years now, and we took kind of a sabbatical for a while, and we came back when LinkedIn Live kicked off and started back up here on this channel. So it's been really great, and we've had some incredible engagement on this channel. So thanks to everyone for that. I think we're going to miss a few folks in the US today, Chris, because of the time change. I think, and I should have made people aware of that sooner. But anyway, they can catch the recording.
Exactly.
We have a lot of stories today from the transportation sector.
Yes.
A lot of that comes out of the big power day that Volkswagen had yesterday. So we'll head into the stories now. Let me just forward this screen, bada bing, into transport.
There we go.
And so Volkswagen had their big power day yesterday. What they call their power day, similar to what Tesla did last September when they had their battery day, and GM did something similar as well. And it's really interesting because, I mean, this article talks about 7 big electrical announcements from Volkswagen yesterday, and that's a bit of clickbait, I gotta say, because when you read down through the article, it's actually about 4 that they've broken. They've broken 1 or 2 of them into 3 announcements, where it was really 1 announcement, But anyway, it's 4 or 5 big announcements. One of the biggest announcements was that Volkswagen are going to build out 6 large gigafactories globally between now and 2030. And when I say large, I mean they're going to be quite large. So the Nevada gigafactory that Tesla built out was rated initially to be 35 gigawatt hours, and people thought that was insane, because at the time the global consumption of batteries was 13 gigawatt hours per annum. But Tesla rated it for 35 and have built it to that, and now are saying they're going to expand it, make it even bigger. Volkswagen are saying that they are going to build 6 40 gigawatt hour gigafactories globally, for a total of 240 gigawatt hours, which is really impressive. And yet it's not. I am a little conflicted in this. First of all, I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic because they're the first traditional OEM to announce that they're going to invest heavily in battery plants and have their own supply of batteries, which is vital for any car company moving forward. So it shows that Volkswagen really take this seriously, this transition to electric. Where I think it's a little underwhelming is the fact that they said they're going to build 240 gigawatt hours of plants, because if you take it that electric cars today have anything from a 50 gigawatt hour battery to a 100 gigawatt hour battery, if we average that at 80 gigawatt hours, that's 3 million cars Volkswagen are targeting per year in 2030. So 3 million cars by 80 kilowatt hours is 240 gigawatt hours. It's just a simple bit of math. So they're only going for 3 million cars a year by 2030. Out of their typical sales per annum is 10 million. So they're talking about 30% of their cars being electric by 2030. And that's if they only use those batteries for passenger cars, because they also make vans and they also make trucks, through their Scania brand. And, there's no mention of that here. If they were building battery plants, you would expect that they would use them in the Scania trucks as well. And, so I think 240, I think that number will be bumped up as we get closer to 2030. I think they'll hit 240 sooner than then, or else they'll have to source them elsewhere, because we're going to be at more than 30% sales by 2030. That's just looking at the way that the market is going right now. And full disclosure, I published it on Twitter and I published it on LinkedIn earlier. So, I might be a little bit biased, but I put money down on a VW ID4 yesterday. Yeah. So, so take everything I say with a large bucket of salt, or a pinch of salt at least. Kaivan is there talking about the transition to electric. Yeah, we're talking about the transition to electric in transportation. That's true. It is underway. It's seriously underway. Volkswagen did release their ID3 in Europe, and their ID4 is in Europe and the US now, and China as well. It's going to be manufactured, is being manufactured. Interestingly, the ID3 and ID4 now are being manufactured in their Zwickau plant, which is 100% renewably powered. So when these cars leave the factory, they should have a carbon footprint of 0. I say should have because it's not quite clear what the carbon footprint of the battery. Yeah, exactly. The supply chain. Yeah, that's not entirely clear. What were you going to say?
It's interesting. I said it's interesting. Well, the point you raised about the calculations on how many vehicles and things like that, it's actually very, very interesting. It's something I hadn't considered. I was looking more at the capacity of the factories as well, and what that actually means. But I dug into this a little bit more, and that is, it doesn't say anything about the partnerships. So when you look at their supply chain, because LG Chem is the largest in the world, Panasonic I think is third, no, it's fourth, and then Tesla is fifth. Yeah. So when you start to look at that, you need to understand who else is involved in this, because Volkswagen just can't go from 0 to battery. Yeah. So they can't. It may be Panasonic. They have
partnership. They're doing a big partnership with Northvolt, who are a company in I want to say Sweden. I think they are set up by former Tesla engineers. Interestingly. And of course, the cool thing about manufacturing batteries in the Nordics is that their carbon footprint is much lower, because the renewable energy is much more accessible there.
But that's only one of the factories. It's not the rest of them.
True. They're going to be building factories in China and the US as well as in Europe. And another one of the announcements that came out yesterday is all Volkswagen cars from 2022 will be capable of doing V2G, vehicle to grid, so they'll be able to do bidirectional charging.
I know, that's brilliant.
That's amazing. It is amazing. Yeah, it is.
That is really, really cool.
And Volkswagen want to get into that space with their LE arm as well. So they want to be selling renewable energy directly to people. They want to be selling the chargers to people. They want to be selling. I think they have plans to sell solar panels to people as well. So they want to do the whole ecosystem. They're partnering with Iberdrola here in Spain, Enel in Italy, BP in the UK. to roll out, I think it's 18,500 public chargers in Europe over the next couple of years, which is at least here in Spain badly needed. So, you know, there's a lot that came out of that Power Day yesterday.
It's a 400 million euro investment in Europe, 2025, and that doesn't include, you know, the edge investments by the other partners. You know, those partners you talked about, you know, Enel, Iberdrola, BP, Aral, Ionity. You know, they are all going to be doing, you know, similar sorts of things, and then globally, I think it's 25 or 20,000, 21,000 more ports in the China, US, and other territories.
America. And the Americans are being spoiled, absolutely, the bastards, because you buy an ID4 in the States and you get 3 years free charging on the Electrify America network.
What?
I know. Can you imagine? That's brilliant, isn't it? Nothing like that here in Spain, damn it.
No. Just think about it. Think about this, right? You know, if I was a retiree, okay, you could literally load up your ID4 with your camping gear, stick a tow bar in the back or anything like that there, and you could travel the US, go to all 50 states for free. You know, never, yes, your food and all the rest of it, but you would not pay for any of your travel from A to B. That's insane.
In fact, I saw another story during the week. I didn't want to load today's show with Volkswagen stories because, you know, I know I'd be seen to be biased already with the way I started out with this one. But the Volkswagen team in the US are going to do a trip across America in an ID4 or maybe a group of ID4s, but they'll be going, you know, from Electrify America chargers coast to coast. And they're not taking the straight route, you know, to New York across to LA. They're going down North Carolina. They're going Chicago. They're going Texas. You know, they seem to be going a little bit all over the place. So they're trying to hit as many states as possible and crossing the coasts as well.
Did they not? Because Thingy did that. Tesla did that with the supercharger network, but they did a direct route.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of a roadshow kind of thing as well. So they'll be plotting the route, they'll be publicizing it. It's going to happen in the next few weeks. So, you know, I guess watch out for that on YouTube or wherever.
I must actually follow the find the Twitter account or the Instagram account, because that will be, you know, that will be heavily public. It would be
fun to follow. Yeah. And another story, and there's a lovely ID4. Another story from Volkswagen, and I promise that's the last one. I mean, their CEO said that they must develop their own in-house software, which sounds obvious, I guess, when you say it out loud like that. But a lot of this stuff by car companies is outsourced because it's not seen as core. And what Howard Deese here is saying, and he said it before. I mean, I remember another story of him a few months back saying that Volkswagen needs to become a software company. So he's very much saying, look, we've got to become a software company. It goes very much back to Mark Andreessen's 2011 essay, Software is Eating the World. It absolutely is eating cars now. And there's another story coming up, not Volkswagen related, I swear, about how software is eating the transportation sector. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yes.
But, you know, so we know that Tesla have an amazing future in the transportation space because they've got this software thing down pat, and they've got this electric thing down pat, and they are working on autonomy as well. They're quite far along on that, but there are others a lot further along. Volkswagen, who have had, you know, reputational issues, as we know, Volkswagen are the only traditional OEM that I've seen that have taken this transition as seriously, or have taken it seriously. I mean, we've seen others dip their toes in EVs. We've seen others dabble with software, But Volkswagen are going hell for leather after this. That announcement that they put out yesterday was a 3-hour announcement. That announcement they put out yesterday with all those announcements within it was amazing. And this also speaks to that. You know, you got to think this kind of roadmap they have to 2030 is a very sensible one. And it means that they actually have a plan to get to 2030. Whereas I look at, you know, companies like BMW, Daimler, Toyota, Mitsubishi, and I go, guys, what are you doing? You know, you're in deep trouble. You're going to be the Nokias of 2030.
Well, when you look at it, and this thing, you know, we know. So Bjorn Gorka, who used to be the CTO of SAP, left SAP to join Volkswagen. He was one of these people who started this journey for Volkswagen, for VW, on developing in-house software. And I do actually know one or two developers who are there, and they're very interested. Or the stuff they're saying is actually really interesting around this sort of thing. But we also hear about things like Android Auto and stuff like that. And what's clear is there's a real two schools of thought in this, because you've got Tesla, who have a very, very integrated car network. What is it? What is it? Kanban network or car? I can't remember what you call it, but it's, you've got the car network bus, which controls all the functions of the car, and then you have the infotainment system. Okay, and in a Tesla, those things are aligned. There's a separation between them, but they are aligned and treated as a software stack in its own right. Okay, when you look at other auto manufacturers, they are not treated as a single stack. They're treated as the infotainment system and then the car control network. Okay,
and even the car control network is often 5 or 6 different independent ones sourced from different suppliers.
It's buggy as hell.
Yeah,
buggy as hell. So it is. You have a look. You have a look on DEF CON, and you know there've been I think 3 different occasions where the folks were going to actually present, you know, damning exploits, and were stopped by legal. So they just couldn't afford. They couldn't afford to fight. You know what would happen to them if their talks actually went ahead uncensored. But hopefully VW are actually getting this, and it will actually result in an actual integrated software stack across, you know, the physical devices themselves through to the infotainment system, which will actually create a much more seamless experience.
And they have said as well that they're going to be doing over-the-air updates. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
We did. We talked about that last week.
That's all sounding very positive. Dennis says, hi. How you doing, Dennis? Good to see you, man. And Kevin is saying, we're experiencing a rapid digital transformation. We are. Creating an autonomous thing is the new normal now. It is. Yeah. But, you know, it's not... it's not creating autonomous things for the sake of creating autonomous things. It's that very much autonomous things that are being created are dropping costs enormously. The shift to autonomous transportation should drop the cost of transportation by about 90%. So, you know, it's going to change completely how we do transportation.
Yeah.
The next story that we saw in this space was about BMW. I know I dissed them a minute ago, but at least for the sustainability story, they are trying to reduce the CO2 footprint of the steel they use in their cars. And they're doing this by investing in Boston Metal. Boston Metal produce CO2-free iron. They use electric arc for doing this, so it's done using electricity, not hydrogen, which a lot of people are promoting as the way forward. You know, I have a very hard time agreeing with the use of hydrogen, because today 95% of the world's hydrogen is made by steam fracturing methane, which means hydrogen is a de facto fossil fuel today. Now they're talking about using green hydrogen, and that's a possibility, but you need to manufacture lots of it. It's very, very, very inefficient, you know. So I think if we can do it using electric arcs like Boston Metal are doing it, it makes a lot more sense, because you can just power that with renewable electricity, and then the inefficiencies are gone straight away. It's a lot better. And this Boston Metal being backed by Bill Gates. What's that called? Their venture fund, energy? No. I've forgotten it.
God! Hold on. I can't. Breakthrough Energy Ventures.
Breakthrough. That's it. Thank you. Breakthrough Energy Ventures.
Sorry, I had it written down here. But you actually had a Twitter conversation with somebody actually doing the actually not back of a beer mat calculations, but it's the when you're producing electricity directly from either solar or wind or hydropower, and then putting that directly into that arc, that's a direct conversion. Whereas even if you were using green hydrogen, you're taking electricity to split it to then store it, and you suddenly have this supply chain. You're sitting there and you're thinking, how much am I actually wasting here?
It's hugely wasteful. It's hugely wasteful.
It is. And what I find interesting on this one was McKinsey. I took a look at a McKinsey report to see what the global CO2 production from steel is every year, and it's 2.8 million tons of CO2 every year.
Wow! So
it is now. What's interesting is in this article they talk about reducing that by two. What is it? It's 2.8 million. I need to have a look. But they basically want to take 2 million out. So is that 2 million of the overall CO2 or 2 million from CO2 from steel? I don't know.
There's Anton.
There's Anton there.
Anton is well. Anton is jealous. Hi, Anton.
But it is a phenomenal number. But McKinsey, as one of their mitigations, they are still talking about, and this is a 2020 report about hydrogen, green hydrogen. So
I've said a couple of times, I think green hydrogen is like unicorn farts. It's in theory very nice, but the reality may be a little different. This is very cool. Smart charging trial demonstrates 80% peak demand reduction. This is a trial where, and we're still on electric vehicles, obviously. And one of the things people who have electric vehicles, one of the things they often do is every second or every third or every fourth evening when they get home, get out of the car, plug it in, go into the house, and leave it plugged in overnight, come out the following morning, you've got a full tank, as it were, and drive off with a 100% full car, and that's great. It's great that you don't have to go to a fuel station to do it. You can do it from home. But what the issue can be is that oftentimes when people come home in the evening, let's call it 6 or 7 o'clock or whatever time it is, they come into the house, they start cooking a meal, so they turn on lights. So in many countries, that's when the peak demand for electricity is. It's when people come home from work. Now, this is when people were coming home from work, and a lot of people are working from home now, so that's slightly different. But you get the point. What this trial was doing was saying, okay, when people plug in at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or wherever it is, we don't start charging straight away. What we do, because we're an intelligent system, we say, okay, we see that you're plugged in, but you're not going to be unplugging until tomorrow morning around 7 o'clock. And that's something you can set in the settings. So you're not going to leave until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. We've got 14 hours between now and then, for example. Your car is at 50%. It'll take, 5 hours to fill. You've got 14 to kind of string that out over. Let's just pull it here and there while the grid is has got extra energy rather than doing it straight away. So space it out over that time so that you're not putting stress on the grid. And you can see there the trial showed an 80% peak demand reduction, which is absolutely phenomenal by doing that. So very often what it would do is it would wait to start charging the car until 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night, or even later, depending. Maybe space it, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, start charging then when most people are asleep and not using a lot of electricity. So go on, Chris.
I was going to say, this actually has a secondary benefit. So it does, because one of the when we talk about the charging stations and things like that, okay, because of the time it takes actually to charge, there's issues with people plugging their cars in and then leaving it for like 8 hours while they go to work, which means nobody else can use it.
True.
Okay, and and you can tell me whether somebody's already done this. They probably already have. You could have multiple leads coming from one charging station, and you put in when you're expected to leave and how much charge you actually need to do what it is you need to do. In which case, you could have multiple leads of one charging station, and over that time, it would switch between charging those cars that are actually connected. Right. So in which case, it makes it more efficient. And it means that the charging infrastructure doesn't need to be as large as it potentially could be.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know if anyone has done anything like that. I've certainly not heard about it if they have. The other thing this article mentioned was the ability to use this network of connected cars as, a virtual power plant, which of course makes a huge amount of sense because if you're talking 1,000 cars, for example, and those cars have an average 80 kilowatt hour battery, right there, that's 80 megawatts. So 80 megawatts is, a nice bit of electricity to be able to pull from or push to. So it makes a nice balancing mechanism for the grid, and grid companies pay for access to those kind of things. So, it's a huge advantage. With Shweta coming in there. Hey, Shweta, hope I'm pronouncing your name okay. An automated system for smart charging will solve the problem. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, and build more for overcharging. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
And there's talk about, in fact, in some chargers, some public chargers, they charge you not just for the electricity that you consume, but also they start charging you once you go over a certain time period as well.
Yes.
So you get hit for an extra charge if you stay on the charger longer than an hour, for example. Once you hit full, then you start being charged extra for overstaying your welcome, as it were, because other people might be looking for the charger. But of course, those are all problems related to a lack of chargers, and that's something that we're hoping will be addressed. So, anywho. I saw this one and I hesitated about putting it on because it's way out there in the realms of speculation. But one of the reasons I did put it out there was because although it's incredibly speculative, it's by a very well-known
Morgan
Stanley analyst. So when you see that, you kind of sit back and go, okay. I mean, this guy knows what he's talking about generally, so maybe he's not too far off the mark here. And what he's saying is that way back when Ford introduced the first Model T, it drastically reduced the price of cars by, I think it was 20 times. It reduced the cost of purchasing a car through, economies of scale, learning curve, factory lines, all these kind of things. It brought down the price of an individual car to 1/20th of what it had been.
Exactly.
And
yes.
What he's saying here is that similar things probably will happen in the automotive space, and EVs costs in the coming years will drop drastically. And my dogs are going insane. And,
it depends. It depends because when because we're now talking about subscription models for vehicles and things like that. So even if it did come down, in a similar order of magnitude style, at the end of the day, I probably will not own the car. I'm actively, the Audi e-tron, for example, is available on a subscription. So it is it's horrendously expensive. Like it's 1,000 GBP a month, including insurance and things like that. That's just insane. So it is. But the fact is that I am actually seriously looking at things like that to subscribe to car ownership as opposed to being an owner and managing all those other things. So yes, he could be right, but
I'm the same. I'm in exactly the same frame of mind. I'm getting a new car in the next few weeks.
Yes.
It's the Volkswagen ID4, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, but I'm not buying it. It's coming to me through the company, so it'll be a company owned car. But in any case, I'm now of the frame of mind that I will never own a car again. So if you think about it in terms of laptops, right? Today, when you're looking for a laptop or a new phone, for example, it's never the right time to buy one because there's always a better one that's, a couple of months away. And as soon as you've bought it, it's out of date and you're kicking yourself because this new one came out with this even better camera or better screen or whatever it is. And that's the way cars are going. Cars are going that way. They're becoming technological objects that are becoming obsolete really, really fast. And, if you spend 30 or 40 or 50,000 on a car now, you're talking about depreciating that over a really short length of time. So it makes very little sense to purchase one of these now when there are some really good rental options out there. Oops, wrong screen again, Tom.
So Dennis is asking, what's the difference between leasing and subscription? And I suppose actually the main difference is actually it's I don't really know what the difference would be. It's subscription is over a shorter period of time. Leasing is typically over 3 to 4 years. So it is. Whereas I think with subscription,
the Leaf that I bought back in 2018, I bought it on one of these PCPs, and that is you pay X amount per month, a few hundred a month, and at the end of the period, which is 3 years in my case, you then pay a balloon payment of, I think for the Leaf, 14,000, and then it's yours. Or you choose not to, and you give it back. Hand it back, which is what I'm doing. That's one kind of lease. I'm not a finance expert. I think, Dennis, you would have known more about that than I would.
I think it could be a leading question.
Dennis is an accountant, so that's why I say that. I'm terrible at finance. Hands up, I know very little about finance. I'm terrible at it. The rental option is just simply a rental option. You just pay a set amount a month. You get to use the car during that time for X amount of kilometers a month. You get to get your maintenance covered, your insurance covered. All the kind of expenses are all taken care of. And at the end of the period, you hand back the car and, there's no balloon payment, nothing like that. You can decide to switch up to a new model or not, just walk away, no commitment, that kind of thing. So that's the way the rental model works. And I think it's a really nice one. Shweta saying there that her view is that hybrids would be more popular. That's not proving to be the case. Hybrids are proving to be less popular than full electric for a number of reasons. One is that the full electrics now are shipping with ranges typically in the kind of 400 kilometer size. So when you have a 400 kilometer range vehicle, why would you go for a hybrid? The only reason people have gone for hybrids in the past is before there were full battery electrics. My previous car before the Leaf was a Prius, for example, and I went for it because there was no option to buy a full electric. And the Prius was great, but of course it's also a more complex vehicle than a regular car because you've got two kind of engines within it, or two modes of transport. So it's two things to maintain, and it becomes more complex to maintain. It becomes more expensive to maintain. You're still burning petrol or diesel, so no. And you're seeing that in the sales figures. The sales figures of electric vehicles are going up. The sales figures of hybrids are kind of plateauing and starting to dip. So the market isn't going for hybrids. So that's not going to be a thing. Simon is saying something there. Let me just pull that back down. Oh, and Anton is well, next big thing, charge and trade with Uberization of moving power. I presume you're talking about transport as a service there. And Simon is saying petrol and diesel cars won't be too expensive to buy. Soon enough, you won't be able to give them away. That's fair enough. That is true. The second-hand value of petrol and diesel cars is going to go through the floor. Now, in the article I was talking about, the guy was saying that the cost of EVs is going to come down to about 5,000 each, which I think is a bit insane, but as I said, this is a Morgan Stanley senior transportation analyst. So, what do I know? Maybe he's right. Anton is saying, and with carbon capture and a lot of synthetic eco-fuels in the market, like ecoethanol. I can see ecoethanol being useful in the aviation industry, perhaps, but not for personal transportation. High-tech products have a very short life cycle now. They do indeed, Kaivan. Okay, there's someone called Chris Kernaghan dropped a comment in there as well.
Yeah.
Leases that include maintenance, etc., have been around of the kind have been around. Tom, subscription models are really little more than the financial engineering. Okay, fair enough. I'll take your expertise in that, Dennis. I don't honestly know.
I think I would agree with him. I think so.
Yeah. I mean, my all I'm saying is we're moving away from ownership. Whether you're talking leasing or renting or some form of financial engineering. Yeah, sure, probably. Don't know enough about financial engineering, but there is a move, and there's going to be a bigger move away from vehicle ownership into some form of financially engineered product, and it's going to be big for the manufacturers as well, because it means they'll maintain ownership of the vehicle. Therefore, they'll maintain ownership of the data coming from the vehicle, which are increasingly connected. It will also mean that because they maintain ownership of the vehicle, there'll be very little incentive to build obsolescence into the vehicle. Now, I said technologically they'll become obsolete, but the battery won't become obsolete. The other components of the car, apart from the technological ones, won't become obsolete. So there'll be a strong incentive on the manufacturers to make sure that the cars are reusable and recyclable. Swap out the technology, put in fresh technology, and send it back out again. I think that's the way the auto industry is going to go. The other interesting story I saw in transportation, the electrification of transportation, is the Stena Bulk company, who make these huge container ships, are looking at making modular container ships, which is something I'd never come across before. It's an idea I'd not seen before. So this ship here, the engine is in the front, and then there's like 6 modules at the back. And the idea is they would be standard modular containers for carrying whatever, the same way we have these big containers for trucks today, standard containers for trucks. The idea is that you'd have these standard containers now for ships as well. They'd be modular, and this ship was carrying 6 of them, but it could be carrying 7 or 8 or 5 or 4 or whatever it is. And each one could have a different product inside in it, the same way containers on trucks and on container ships have different products. These could have different products in them as well, and they're covered, in this case it's a rendering, so they're covered in solar panels and wind turbines, and there's collapsible sails going up there on top of the ship as well, and there's the possibility to make the ship autonomous. It's all concept stuff, but I thought it was really interesting because it's a concept I'd not seen before, creating modular containers for ships.
Well, the thing that's interesting is when you look at what's there, you've got liquefied natural gas, you have CO2, you have chemicals products, you've got LH, lithium hydroxide, and you have MEOH, which is it's hydroxide. I can't remember what it is. But the thing about it is that with the revolution that we saw with actual container ships, where everything is in a box and you can carry multiples. You can carry thousands of different products in one container ship.
Yeah.
But with these types of products, you haven't been able to do that. And this is really interesting because it means that there's a diversification of what you can actually carry.
Yeah.
Where we saw with oil tankers and things like that, an economy of scale of having something at that size, but this is fascinating. This really is quite cool. So it is the concept of it, and then it is. It
now,
is really,
whether the economics work out for shipping companies, but this is coming from a shipping company, so you'd have to expect that they've thought this through and figured this could actually work. So I'd love to see some of these on the high seas at some point. And Victor Martinez has dropped in to say hi. Hola, Victor. Great to see you.
Yes.
Next, we go into the emissions space, and there's some cool things there as well.
Yes.
There's one or two of these I didn't know whether to put them into transportation or emissions, because they kind of cross the line, or cross over between the two. And this is one of them: making jet fuel from food waste.
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating.
I saw this.
Huge amount of waste in the food industry. About 30% of all the food that we make ends up in waste.
900 million tons or something like that.
Something crazy like that, yeah. And the aviation industry is one that is in deep doo-doo when it comes to trying to lower its emissions, because it's burning kerosene right now and there's very few alternatives. So they're talking about using food waste, which typically goes into landfill. Wet waste typically goes into landfill, and in landfill it creates methane. So it's a double whammy. Goes into the earth, gives off methane, goes into the atmosphere. Methane is obviously a very potent greenhouse gas. If we're stopping that from happening by taking the food waste and then converting it into a fuel for planes, and thereby reducing the emissions coming out of the back of the plane as well, it's again one of these double whammy situations. It's a really nice idea, I think.
Yeah, but the what's interesting is this is the blend, because we spoke before about British Airways wanting to use bioethanol, and that was a 90% mix. So it was, and one of the things was, what does that actually do to the lifespan of the engine itself? Now, this is actually a 70% mix.
Yeah, exactly.
So that in itself is actually, that's a very positive step. The bit that I'd actually want to see is actually the engine data, to see what effect that has on the long-term on the long-term sustainability of the actual engine. Because there's no point in doing this if it just means planes go through more engines. And then you have to manufacture more engines, and then you're in a long, very carbon-intensive supply chain. But ultimately, this is it doesn't have to just be jet fuel. It could be lots and lots of different types of fuel. So it could. But
one of the things that. One of the reasons I took this story as seriously was because the stuff is being manufactured by NREL. NREL are the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. If it was some couple of students in a hovel somewhere proposing this as the latest breakthrough, I'd have gone, yeah, I don't think so. But when it comes from NREL, you kind of go, okay, this is a serious organization pursuing this, and they don't go into projects like this unless they've already talked to some serious partners in the space. So.
Actually, there is one other thing that I did forget. It produces 30% less soot, which means it burns more cleanly.
Yeah.
Which means it's actually that is a big. I forgot about that. That was one of the things that I was very positive about, is the fact that that reduction in soot means that the fuel itself burns more cleanly in the engine.
True.
And that is massively positive as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually good for the engine.
It is. Yes. It means there's not so much gunk in it.
Yeah. I thought this was a fascinating story.
Yes.
In the UK and other countries as well, I presume, it's quite standard to use gas boilers to heat water to heat the house. So you use a gas boiler to heat water, and then you move that water through radiators throughout the house, and that heats the rooms in the house. So
it does.
That's not the system we have here, but it's a system in a lot of countries. I suspect it certainly is in the UK. It was in Ireland when I was there.
It's still the same.
The same. And so obviously, burning gas to heat water, not the most climate-friendly way of heating your home. And what this story is talking about is a new invention. It's a way of getting rid of the gas boiler and replacing it with a microwave boiler to heat your house. So you just take out the gas boiler, swap in this instead. It's got 30 meters of coil within it, through which goes water, and it microwaves the water going through that coil. It doesn't use microwaves like we have in our microwave ovens, which use a magnetron, which is kind of a brute force way of doing it. It uses solid state microelectronics to create the microwave, so it's a much more precise and lower energy way of doing it. So the company who are doing this are bringing the first one to market. I think it's next year it's coming to market. So
2022.
Yeah. So, well, I remembered.
Yeah, you did.
I was just making it up, you know. But yeah, no. So they're coming to market next year, and I think this is, you know, potentially huge, because there is. If I remember correctly, there's actually legislation in the UK which says you have to get rid of gas boilers from your home, right? Certainly in new build houses. New build houses from 2020. Is it as late as 2025?
I genuinely don't know, but I would find that unusual, but I would say you could probably, you know, gas boilers that fall within a certain energy efficiency range could be outlawed. That would definitely, you know, be one of the things. But I hadn't heard about the actual, you know, because here in Ireland you couldn't do that, because the gas network or you know, the options for heat here in Ireland are either gas or oil. The heat pumps haven't really taken a good foothold. You out where I am, for example, you know, I'm out with the farmers. You know, you've got the city, you've got the suburbs, and then you've got the rich people, and then you get the farmers, right? I'm out with the farmers, so I've migrated way out. But the Phoenix Gas only came up here 2 years ago, and I think there's, out of a street of about 15 people, I think only 3 of us have actually taken the gas. Now that's, you know, the boiler that I have is, you know, the most efficient one that was on the market at the time. We invested in it, and it has been fabulous, because our oil central heating system was just horrifically inefficient. So it was, and but yeah, I would seriously consider this.
Yeah, it's nice.
So even though I only put the gas in, not you know 2 or 3 years ago, by the time this would actually reach me, it could be 4 or 5 years down the line, and I would seriously consider this, because for no other reason than there are 5 people in this house, and at some point I'm going to have 3 teenagers all using the shower, and I'm going to need an awful lot of hot water.
Oh,
you know, I'm going to need a lot of hot water.
I'm there.
Yes,
right
exactly.
We have two hot water tanks in this house. There's the one on the roof that's heated by the solar panel on the roof, so it's a hot water solar panel, and that's a 300-liter tank.
Wow,
and
that's pretty impressive.
Then there's an electric tank.
20 meters. That's 20 minutes of a power shower. That's 20 minutes at a power shower. 15 liters of water a minute. Nice. Yeah. But the other one, sorry, keep going.
The other one is 80 liters, and it's an electric water heater. So I've got 380 liters of hot water, and it's often used. It's like, oh, good God, you can't be in there that long. How are you in there how did you use 300 liters? Oh my God. Really?
So even
2 teenage boys.
Yeah, well, that is it. You know, a 10-minute shower, 15 liters of water a minute. There's 150 liters gone.
Yeah.
So there's, and between the 2 of them, you know, like, and that's just, you know, I have a 300-liter tank as well, so out in the garage, and it's you know, it is just hilarious.
By the way, heating homes here in Spain is typically done with hot air.
Yes.
So
the air source heat pump.
The air conditioning units that we have for cooling the house in the summer can also heat the house. So they pump hot air through the rooms during the winter.
Nice.
So and that's fully electric, and I mean it's not hugely efficient unless you've got a well insulated house, but it does fine. And like I said, it's fully electric. Our electric company is 100% renewable, and we've got solar panels on the roof as well, which help. So I don't feel too bad about it. This is a cool one.
Yes.
A company in Iceland turning CO2 into stone. Now, it's a process that takes 2 years. It's a process that requires a bit of optimization as of yet. But basically, what they're doing is they're capturing CO2 from industrial plants that are producing it, and then they're turning it, as I said, into stone. And of course, one of the things that you can do with that is we use lots and lots and lots and lots of stone in construction today.
Yep.
So why wouldn't we take the stone that's being created here and use that in construction, scale this up massively? Because we have, okay, the one of the problems we have with the climate is that we are now at about 415 parts per million CO2. And the kind of way to think about that is if we think about a frozen lasagna that we've taken out of the freezer and we put it into our preheated oven.
Mm-hmm.
The frozen lasagna is the planet, the preheated oven is the atmosphere. So right now, the lasagna, the planet, is warming, but there's a lot more heat in the atmosphere in the preheated oven to kind of take over the poles and stuff like that. We're a long way from, if we stopped producing CO2 tomorrow, the planet would continue warming and warming and warming for the next number of decades. We've got a lot of, to use the pun, we've got a lot of baked in warming to come. So if we can, no, it's not if we can, we have to.
Exactly, yes, that's the right word.
Sorry?
That's the right word. We have to.
Yeah, we have to not just stop producing CO2, but we have to suck it back out of the atmosphere as well to not just mitigate the emissions that are there, but to reverse the problems that we've created for ourselves doing this. And this is one cool way I've seen of doing that. So let's see. Anton has left a comment there. Is it? Okay, Back to Earth is a movie recommendation from Anton. Okay, cool.
Ah, good. Excellent.
Zac Efron, very nice. I wasn't aware of that. Thanks, Anton. What were you going to say, Chris?
I was going to say, so the cement, because we've talked about cement before. If I recall correctly, I think it was 2.5% of global CO2 emissions are directly attributable to cement and quarrying and things like that there. This is one of those things that could go a long way to reducing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, a massive way.
Yeah, no, it's a real good news story. I was delighted when I came across this one. And
Dennis, unicorn farts.
I think Dennis is referring to my hydrogen reference there earlier on the unicorn
exactly.
farts. Okay. Second to last story, and I thought this was a nice kind of circular one. Nissan are taking back some of the batteries in their Leaf packs and using them in the robots that are being used to build electric cars. When these robots initially shipped, if I remember correctly from the story, when the robots initially shipped, they shipped with lead acid batteries. And then they started using cells from their own battery packs, and now they're using the actual battery packs to power the robots. And it's a very cool one because the robots themselves, they're autonomous and they take themselves back to their charging stations whenever they need it. And if you think now, the batteries in the Leafs are smaller than the batteries in the larger cars like the ID4s and things like that. So the battery in my Leaf now is 40 kilowatt hours. The battery in the earlier Leafs were 22 kilowatt hours, for example.
Yes.
So if your 22 kilowatt hour battery has lost 80% of its charge, it's then down to about 17 kilowatt hours or thereabouts. I'm crap at maths, as I mentioned before. So it's about 17 kilowatt hours, slightly more than a Powerwall battery, which you'd use to charge your home. But that's loads for a little autonomous robot running around a factory.
Exactly.
So, that would easily power it for a day because, it's only going, a few hundred meters backwards and forwards, whatever it is. So I thought this is a very cool one. And, it's a nice bit of circularity in it there. The batteries from the cars are being put now into the robots that are helping make the cars that have the batteries in them.
But this is what we talked about. I think this is probably the third time we've talked about something like this, and this is actually a concrete example of the new life cycle of the battery.
Yeah.
It's not just we're going to stick it in a car. We're going to stick it in a car, and then when the car is finished with it, we're going to stick it into something else. Then when that's finished in it, we're going to stick it in something else, and prolong the lifespan of that battery in it. In order to get the most amount of value out of it, but also to delay recycling it for as long as possible, which would be a cynical way of looking at it, maybe, but it is a concrete example.
One thing I forgot to mention about the VW announcement yesterday, their Power Day yesterday, they said that going forward, their plan is to recycle the batteries as well, and they want to source 95% of the components going into their batteries from recycled sources. So their batteries are going to be made from 95% recycled batteries, essentially. So that's their long-term plan, is that they don't want to be mining for the things that go into their batteries. They want to be reusing and recycling for 95% of the components that go into their batteries, which is, that's an astounding aim. It's a phenomenal target to aim for. Kudos for that. If they can pull it off, even better.
Absolutely.
So finally, and again, I'm using the finally here to do a bit of self-promotion. Tomorrow, I'll be hosting a live stream on the topic of logistics as a critical part of a resilient, sustainable supply chain. It's one of the Designed to Operate live stream series that we do roughly every second Wednesday. So we've done one on planning, we've done one on manufacturing, we're doing one now on logistics, we've done one on I've forgotten the whole series, and the last one will be on Operate. So this one tomorrow, you can see the date there, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, woo, tomorrow at
I know, loving it.
It's at 4 o'clock CET, which is 8 o'clock Pacific. I'm not sure if those times are right. Okay.
Double check it.
I think it's 5 p.m. CET. Oh dear. I think the time is wrong on that. Anyway, it's going out tomorrow at 4 or 5 o'clock CET. So keep an eye out for that. It's usually really great. The previous ones we've had have had a huge engagement, a couple of hundred comments typically on them as they go out, from people coming in asking questions, things like that. We show up to these with about 20 minutes worth of content, and we end up having to stop on the top of the hour because the questions keep coming. So the engagement is fantastic. Each of them, they get about 500-600 views while they're going out live, but in the days after, it goes up to typically 2,500 to 3,000 views. So they're doing really well. And Dennis has dropped a comment in there again. It's before the pubs open. Oh, wait a minute. You're retired, Dennis. We know that you won't be watching us, but or do come along and hassle Till. Till Dingle is my colleague who'll be on it. Give him a hard time. I'd love it.
Excellent. Yep.
All right. That's it, folks. That's all, folks, for today's call. Thanks a million for dropping by, for your interest, for your engagement, for your comments, for your snark in Dennis's case. It's been good fun as always. I don't think we had as many people with us today, but that's down to the time change in the US, and that meant it was going out at a different time to normal in the US. But I hope people catch up with it in the recording anyway, if they didn't catch it live. But anyway, we shall see you all again, same time next week. It will be at 5 p.m. CET, which is for the next couple of weeks, noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. Okay. See you all next week, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.